Characters. Who are they? What are they? Who will they become? So much goes into the creation of a character, their backstory, culture, beliefs, image, eye color, description, personalities, and so much more. As readers, we only get a glimpse of what truly goes into each character. So grab a beverage and get comfortable as we explore this episode's character in depth with your host, Madilynn Dale. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the season finale of the Fall Character Driven. This has been an amazing season, and we have had a ton of amazing guests. I know I have grown my TBR list just from this show, not to mention all the books from the Indie Connection on This Week in Indies every week. But this episode, per usual for the season finale, is going to be a little bit different. So without further ado, let me bring in the godfather of Go Indie Now.
Hello, everybody.
Hey,
Welcome.
Joe.
Hello.
So, are you ready for this?
Yes, I'm ready. Are you?
I am. All right,
All right.
guys. We're switching places.
Yeah, and so we're here to talk about one of Madelynn's characters. So why don't you introduce the character first, and then we can go into it, because I have some good questions for this.
Yes. All right, guys. So tonight we are going to be talking about my character, Silver, and she comes from my Captain Hook retelling that's dropping in December this year, guys. And she's been quite a fun character to flesh out. She's been kind of pushing her way out in the mix of me working on the Ember series. So don't be surprised if some of her quirks match Ember, but she's definitely got her own cup of tea going on over here.
Are we safe to assume there's a little spice in this deal?
There is less spice in this one than the Ember series. I don't know how it worked out that way, but it did.
Yeah, sometimes you gotta just calm it down a little bit, right?
Yeah. She was like a refreshing kind of break from the urban fantasy, because she's more in the high fantasy realm.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the interesting thing about like a Hook series, right, or doing a retelling and kind of staying within the truth of what the original concept was or the idea was. And with Captain Hook, there's a certain kind of gray area that goes along with those characters and pirates, and oftentimes we're devolving into more of an anti-hero than we are a hero story. So to tell this from a female perspective, was that kind of a fun, interesting exercise to kind of be a little bit bad, but be a little bit good? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and she definitely fulfills that role really well, because she's kind of got this hidden agenda with this persona she's got to keep up as a pirate.
Mm. Yeah, and so also in retelling a saga that is very famous and very popular, what were you careful of? What were some of the things that you had to watch and make sure that Silver embodied in order to kind of give it that enough of what we were familiar with, but also something new?
Well, part of it, I definitely had to double check all the copyright information regarding like Neverland and Peter Pan and everything. And really, she's more of a descendant of Captain Hook himself. And Hook was you never really get his backstory. Growing up, we always wondered, like, how did this actually happen? Where did they actually come from? Like, why does he hate Peter Pan so much? And it just I explored that with her story. And she actually, more so, without giving too much away, clears her family's name and highlights some of the issues that Peter Pan, his lineage, may or may not have struggled with further down the line. Because, I mean, that's something we don't see with that story. Like, what does pixie dust actually do to them?
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah.
What is your favorite quality of Silver that she embodies?
Gosh, that is such a hard one to pick. She, despite her tough exterior, is very warm-hearted. But she works very hard for only a certain number of people to see that because of how their world was, what happened when she was a kid, and how things seem to come to a head and put her in the position we find her in at the start of the story.
I mean, did you was there something about the Hook saga that you didn't know going into this that you learned about that you kind of incorporated and gave Silver an opportunity to explore other than the backstory?
That is a tough one too. So there wasn't a lot of information out there on the backstory of Captain Hook, why he was the way he was, or anything, other than the alligator eating his hand, him losing that, and
Hmm.
the alligator wanting to chase him, which that does kind of come into play in the story. But other than that, I pretty much kind of had free creative reign.
Hmm.
So I had to bring in some tragic stuff to kind of give her family the sense of why they went the direction they did. But she finds something that's a redeemable quality that doesn't get brought up. And the original story that people see, like, for one, why do all these kids and stuff keep showing up in Neverland? Like, where does that happen? Where does that come from? Why does that happen? That was something that I kind of took a little bit of that darker portion and explored it with this as well. So,
Okay, well, it sounds like every time we get closer to talking about Silver, we're bordering on spoiling things. So let's bring it back let's bring it back a little bit here and talk a little bit about the time period in which Silver is existing. And for a woman at that time period, a woman on sea, especially, there's a different mentality and there's a different way in which men and women interacted and were treated
oh
amongst one
yeah.
another during that time period. Talk a little bit about navigating that challenge and still kind of keeping a modern flair that you're kind of known for in writing something like this.
Yeah. So I definitely stuck with the whole modern flair of women stepping up and claiming their position in the world. But you're right, in that time period that she exists in, it's not normal for a woman to captain a ship, own a ship, let alone lead a huge mass of people in anything. And not only is she the captain, her best mate is a female too. So
Uh,
they're working together. They've been best friends since childhood. She's actually a descendant of who everybody knows as Smee. So, and I know probably a lot of you are like, how in the world did he get a woman to have kids? Especially if you watch the Peter Pan, I did as a kid. But they grew up together really close and they ended up taking over a ship and they lead it. They do their own thing with it. A lot of times, men will challenge them. And in the story, a situation does come up where the female position is challenged and a lot happens. It's a very dark scene, but Silver comes out on top. She gets rid of the person that causes the problem, and it kind of like leads into the mention of different gods and goddesses of the world too in this situation.
hmm.
But she does have a lot on her plate just holding her place as a female in that world because people don't respect females at that time. But she
Sure.
commands respect when she meets you. Like, she's no nonsense. Like, I am in this position. I earned this position. It's not just because my dad was this person. It's because I have busted my ass to get here. So
So, what kind of differences would you say Silver commands a ship versus her dad? What are some what are a couple similarities in which we would recognize it, and what are some differences?
So she definitely keeps to the captain's quarters like Captain Hook does in the story. She's the only one that holds those quarters. She commands the ship similar to her dad, but women have a place on the ship too. It's not just made up of men.
Mhm.
There's men and women. They have to work together. She does not ask them what their past is. So if she comes across them, and she rescues a lot of people too,
Mhm.
and you'll explore that idea because that's like a little Easter egg there, more into her soft side. But she gives them an opportunity to either, if they're a decent person, stay on the ship if they want to and live a life there, lead a life that's productive, that she pays them well and make sure everybody's fed and stuff, or go on and move on. But a lot of the islands and stuff that are featured in the story, they're very poor. There's a mainland that has bigger cities and stuff, but she gives people a place in the world. And I feel like Captain Hook actually did that with some of his pirates
Mhm.
because none of them looked like they were in rough shape. They always had food, they always had good things. So that was something I felt like kind of transferred through. And he
Mhm.
was kind to his pirate brethren.
Yeah. All right. I don't know if you could do this without spoiling anything, but what do you feel like is the most evil thing that Silver does on this adventure?
Oh, oh, people do die. I'll put it that way. People
Okay.
she does not originally really want to kill, she has to.
Mm.
Like, she is forced into killing certain individuals. Um, they don't give her the option otherwise. It has to happen that way. But she's also, yeah, I think that's like being forced to kill a certain individual or two is the darkest thing she's had to face. And she does struggle with a lot of guilt
Mhm.
and everything afterwards, which I kind of have been toying with an idea of making a sequel to this. And my editor, which was Lily Lucchesi, you guys, she's been on the show this season too, kind of was like, you should totally go with it and explore it. And she's got a lot of that guilt's going to come up in that story too.
All right. Well, yeah, you're answering questions before I asked them.
I'm sorry.
So there goes that question. uh, I am curious a little bit about the adventure that they go on. What is the adventure that starts this book and goes? We get to experience with Silver.
So the adventure they're going on, there it starts out. She's tired of dealing with Pan's descendant, which she calls Pan's descendant, who's also female in this story, the Sparrow. And the Sparrow has been leaving Neverland frequently to come and find her ship specifically to terrorize her. So the book opens up with a fight scene and the two are battling and stuff. And she does not understand why the Sparrow is coming so far out to challenge her, to stop her. She's not bothering her. No, there's no pirates on the island anymore. The Sparrow and her family, they all ran them off. Um, and literally, a lot of people lost their homes because of it. Because before they were ran off, there was a pirate community, a pirate town
Hmm.
that Captain Hook was leading with
Mm.
his family and everything. And it was kind of like a refuge for pirates to go to. They had to stick to a specific rule. There was no fighting or anything. They all had to get along, no stealing. But something
Hence why
happened.
it doesn't exist anymore, probably.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not so much on the pirates end, but
Okay.
because of Peter Pan.
Mm.
And that you'll find that out about a quarter of the way into the story.
All right.
But she is just trying to go and pirate and steal. She kind of pulls in a whole Robin Hood thing because
Mm.
she's stealing from the rich to give to the poor, which I totally didn't intend to do that. That kind of like popped its way out after I wrote everything down. It's like, oh, I didn't mean to like wrap that in there too. So you're kind of seeing Robin Hood mixed with Captain Hook. It was weird, but it
Mhm.
makes sense. For some, it just does. And she's like, okay, I'm done with this. I want to go home. I want my life back that I had when I was younger. I want to live on the land that I was born on.
Mm,
So she has to devise a method, a way to stop the sparrow and anybody else that's with her. And her first stop on the quest is to find somebody that can help her counteract the use of pixie dust, because how else do they stop them but take
mm,
away their ability to fly?
mm. All right. So, one of the cool things about writing on the high seas and writing pirate adventures is the creatures and the things that they come across. What did you explore in this book? What did Silver have to face in this book, particularly, that were interesting creatures and fun things that you wanted to tackle as a writer?
So there's not a ton of creatures as like what you would find in some of my other pieces, but this
Okay.
one I really explored the relationship between the people and the gods of the world, because the ocean is also controlled by the gods.
Okay.
And for some reason, she has been in good graces with the god that controls the sea. And I'll probably explore that later on. But in one of the incidents that happens, she has to have somebody, she forces them to walk the plank. And the gods actually show up and take this person because she lets the sea judge them, not just her, but she's like, the gods of the sea will judge you whether you live or die, whether you sink or if they spare you, kind of thing.
Mm,
And it actually, not everybody that's standing there when she makes this person walk the plank catches it, but it freaks her out that the god actually showed up like he did in
mm,
his presence showed up. Like he didn't physically come in a form, but he answered. And that was an eerie situation, because when we get to the island, you start seeing a little more of the creatures that stuff and show up. But that was like one of the scariest encounters she's had,
mm,
thankfully, because of her hidden pursuit as a pirate. I think she's in good graces with the gods there. But when she gets back to the island, the magic is imbalanced there because of the Pan family,
mhm,
and different creatures and stuff are not like, it's almost like they're mentally not themselves. But even when she runs into the crocodile, there's a whole other thing that unfolds there, because he's not just a crocodile.
mm. Of course he's not. Of course, it wouldn't be a Madilynn Dale story without like shape shifting or something changing.
Exactly, right? It tried really hard not to throw that in there, but I was like, "No, this makes sense because he's not, there's gotta be a reason, like, he's like this." So,
What do you think is Silver's best quality that you would have liked to possess as a person?
ooh, her ability to forgive people, honestly. She does, I wouldn't say she forgives easily,
Hmm.
but she does it in a more rational manner than what I do, because I let my emotions kind of control a lot of my forgiveness when it comes to people that have done me wrong. But with her, she has a more logical side and actually thinks it through, which I want to say comes from her father.
Yeah, yeah. Who's very much like about logic and
Mhm.
reasoning, uh, even if it's on the opposite end of things
Yeah.
most of the time. Yeah, I am curious about because I know you and how you write, and so there is a lot of times when the characters speak very loudly to you and talk to you quite a bit, and so at what point would you say that Silver was so loud that you almost had to shut her up? Because I'm sure there was a point when Silver was screaming at you. So tell us a little bit about that moment. You don't have to spoil the scene or anything, but was that happening basically?
Did. So when I originally got this idea to write, it was going to be a short story for
Mhm.
and I was going to submit it for an anthology collection that CL Cannon was doing. And as I started writing, she was like, no, this is not how this story is going to go. This is not going to fit. There is more to this than what you are trying to put out. And I was like, oh, but I'm working on this too right now. Like, I can't work on a long story. And when it's like she screamed at me, like, no, this is the situation. these people have an addiction to pixie dust that's similar to like a meth addiction. And
Yeah.
this is a problem. Like, let's explore this more. There's more to this story than me just falling in love with somebody. And I was like, okay, fine. So we're there. And yeah, that's probably another reason I'm a little more delayed on getting Living Flames out. So
Mm. We can
think
blame Silver, huh?
yes.
So you mentioned that you're planning on maybe exploring her further and doing another adventure and series, or maybe even turn this into whatever trilogy, a series.
Yeah, we'll
Um,
see. I feel like I say that anymore with any stories now.
right, right. I mean, you fall in love with characters, and characters fall in love with you, and they want to tell more stories, right? So,
Yeah.
and they trust you to tell their story, and that's obviously Silver's a loud character that wants to be
Mhm.
heard, right? So, you have to acknowledge that sometimes, right? Is that something that you really do think about? Are you really planning on it, or is it something that's just kind of maybe, maybe not?
Uh, it's gone more from a maybe, maybe not to like it's gonna happen. I just gotta find a place to fit it in with everything else I'm trying to do, writing rise and everything.
Mhm.
So yeah. Part of me is like, okay, I'll just wait until I'm done with this series, but I know how my brain works. So it might be I finish like Living Flames and then switch gears to that for a little bit. We'll see. Because as I've learned from like chatting with other authors, it's okay to pause and take a break from working and writing a series to write something else. So
Yeah, I mean, I imagine the first time you go out with this book that people are going to be like, "Oh, is there going to be more silver?" And then when people start reading it, and then you start to see them at cons and stuff like that again, they're probably going to be chomping at the bit to get something, right? So, it's all a matter of timing in that respect.
yes, it is. And I kind of leave the scene that kind of okay, there's an epilogue at the end, and the scene that's there definitely leaves room for that world to be explored more. And this one, I also created a map and stuff, so there's a lot to be explored there,
Hmm.
especially with things that develop between the actual ending of the story and the start of the epilogue because there's a 6-month gap there and somebody ends up pregnant, but it's not Silver. So
Okay. Is there? Do you feel like if this story was to continue, that there has to be an evolution beyond the Pan versus Hook series kind of idea, and kind of let Silver do their own thing, or do you think that is always going to be the connection between for Silver and going forward in these stories?
I haven't put much thought into that, but they are gonna kind of go into their own thing.
Hmm.
The world is obviously still gonna be the same, and maybe some other siblings from the sparrow will show up because she's the only one that remains on the island. But as I've already mentioned, the pixie does create something like a meth addiction, and
Hmm.
if you've seen what that results in, if other family members have messed with it,
Hmm.
there's going to be things too there. So it could definitely stay tied. Either way, it's the story is going to move forward though.
So, what does Silver have of you that you gave her?
I definitely think she has a little bit of my kind of like somewhat bubbly personality, but she doesn't let everybody see it.
Yeah.
The people that are close to her, which is typical of me too, I can put on that. I don't know how you would say it, that persona of like professionalism. But if she's just with her friends, she's goofy. She cuts up. It's has fun and she thankfully has a few of those people on the ship with her, so
Mhm.
she gets that break. She doesn't have to be in "I'm the captain all the time" mode. So
Does she have an interesting tavern night in this book where she gets a little tipsy?
she doesn't per se, but there is a cabin thing that happens in the story. So
Fair enough. Fair enough.
oh, definitely, that gave me a great idea for book 2, like, I'm not gonna lie. So, it's like, you said that, I can already see it playing out now, so
You're welcome. That's awesome. So yeah, I mean, Silver sounds like a character that's right up your alley, and this for people who have read your stuff before, what similarities would you say it compared to? I mean, other than your own voice, obviously, but is there certain things that people would gravitate towards that have read your series from before that they would enjoy with this one?
the action, definitely, because it's not a slow start, you jump in right into the action of it from page 1, and it
Becoming a
carries through.
signature of yours.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't start out that way, but it's
Right.
like I just that's what grabs people's attention, and that's the kind
Yeah.
of stuff I like to read. It grab addicted. But that and just the easy flow, um, from start to finish of following her without it getting stagnant, that's
Mhm.
another thing, which I hope is a recurring quality, knock on wood. So in my stories.
So, okay, so it's coming out in December.
Mhm.
When, what are you? Is there opportunity for people to maybe beta read for you or arc read, or what are you looking for right at this moment? Because this is
Yeah.
going to come out
So
way
I have
before that.
ARC copy is dropping this week,
There
guys.
you go,
So
everybody.
you can
So,
check out my website to grab a link to sign up for an ARC copy. Um, so just grab a copy from my website. You'll have to sign like your name and everything, like just your information, because I'm doing it through Story Origin to
okay,
keep up with who all signs up, who actually reads it and posts a review and stuff. It's just kind of a better working system for me that way.
so it gives you an idea of who you want to target for the next one, right? So,
Mhm,
yeah, Story Origin's a really good site for that kind of thing.
mhm. Glaring at the world around me, an old fisherman saying floats through my mind. Red sky at night, sailors delight. Red sky in the morning, sailors take warning. I wonder, does that saying apply to more? I wish I'd asked my father before he was killed. Would I have been prepared for this attack if I knew it applied to more than the weather? I guess it's too late now. I hold my position and curse as my arm shakes, sweat pouring down my brow. I'm forced to sidestep and swing my sword up at an arc as my opponent lunges at me. Our weapons meet, and we cross from one end of the deck to the other. The echo of metal striking against metal fills the air around us as we continue our deadly dance. Only one will survive, and I'll be damned if it isn't me. The wretched woman across from me smirks. I know she wants me gone, and to stop my ship, but I refuse. My father trained me against all types of opponents, and she's no different. Even with her background, I know, somehow, she can be defeated. The ancestral blood that fills her veins doesn't aid her. She's nothing without her cheating pixie dust. You take that away, and I'm sure she wouldn't fare much against me and my sword. I grimace, forcing myself to focus on my task. With screams and groans filling the air, her crew fights a losing battle against mine. Why they bothered with us today is beyond me, but I won't back down without a fight. The churning sea encourages me as I clench my jaw. It's as if it knows how volatile I am, and I focus on my movements. The salty spray splashes up the sides of the ship, coating the deck and creating another obstacle for my crew to face as the flying idiots attack. It takes skill to keep from slipping as we move, and thankfully that's something we've trained for. Seeing an opening on my opponent's left, I swing my sword only for her to lift into the air and unleash a shrill bird call at the last second. The fighting stops around us as her crew takes to the air to escape, hooting and hollering like kids. My opponent cackles loudly as she flies higher toward the clouds, growing smaller the further she goes. Coward. That stupid sparrow! I can't believe she did this to my ship. Why did she break from her usual pattern? I glare at the skies as Norma Pan disappears into the clouds.